right now. Frank Klose joins us to try to give us a little bit of insight on this baseball. I mean, yesterday we were talking about a 114-game season, Frank. Where are we potentially today?
Well, yesterday, Jeff Passan of ESPN reported late that MLB could possibly go forward with a schedule that was 40 to 50 games. Now, the way that they could do that is under the agreement from March 26th, in which the players agreed to play for their prorated salaries. So what seems to be kind of the latest negotiation tactic is that baseball is sort of out. This is not a formal proposal. They did not propose this to the players, but they basically said that, well, they're kind of in their rights to just say, okay, it's time to start baseball under the terms of that March 26th agreement, which is prorated salaries, but by that time be at 40 to 50 games left. And that, of course, would mean players earn a quarter of their salaries. And I think, obviously, they're looking for much, much more than that, as evidenced by their proposal, which was 114 games prorated salaries.
So the players say 114. The owners went with 82. What's this 50 number that we're hearing? Where does that kind of come in?
Well, if you remember, the 82 games was assuming the players took big pay cuts, and the most highest earning players were going to take a bigger pay cut than other people. So this 40 to 50 idea is based on the idea that players would be paid according to their prorated salaries, as was the agreement in March. But this would be, and so I guess it kind of speaks to the idea that owners feel they will lose too much money if they're playing without fans in the stands.
Who do you think the 40 to 50 game proposal favors more? I mean, the prorated money that they agreed to players want, but if you're not going to play enough games with that prorated money, is it really what they're trying to fight for?
Well, as Passan noted, a couple players said off the record to him that this would be troublesome, and that would be because, you're asking them to risk injury that now, because you're so late in the year, could affect you next season, could affect your ability to get a contract in 2021 by only earning 25% of the salary. There's a way of weighing risk there that, for example, if I tear my ACL and the season is, I don't know, at this point, 20 games in, well, you probably just cost yourself the following season too. You tear something in your arm or your elbows the entire next season, and meanwhile, you've only collected 25% of your salary this year. So that is a concern for the players, as was the idea that, some players go through slumps throughout the year. Even some of the best of them can go through a 40-game stretch where they're just hitting 190. And, maybe at the end of the year, their average is still a good 275 to 300 because they're good players, but the small sample size could impact how they earn the following year. Now, granted, a utility player that happens to be filling in might hit 330, and then it makes them look like they're a top-notch starter. But that is concerning to players, especially because all players are set to hit free agency, and they don't want that skewed by having a season with that little pay.
Just to play a little devil's advocate, can't those same players get hurt in any other year, or can't they have a size where instead of hitting 180, they're hitting 420, and that could help them out?
Think about it like this. If you play a regular season, you started on time, player gets injured in August but was having a really nice year, and it's not a type of injury that would be that would knock you out the next year even. That player already has a significant body of work. So if it's an injury that's not going to impact your ability to play, you've lost the opportunity to still show that, hey, it's my body of work. I can bring value to your team. And you really can't do that if it's a short season. And let's face it, maybe even let's talk about the strained oblique, which is a common baseball injury lately, right? That's the kind of thing that you just need to sit and rest for 4 weeks before you can return. And if you return too soon, you could make it worse. So a player strains his oblique, maybe in a normal season, sits out 4 weeks, and he goes right back to work. Well, here, 4 weeks is a lot of the season. So that really does impact your earning power the next season.
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, looking at the baseball possibilities here. Would you surmise that most of this, if not all of this, is based on financials right now? I mean, is all the other stuff just kind of inconsequential that they'll come to terms on that the number one and the sticking point, the biggest hurdle is the financials?
I would say so, and here's kind of my perspective. You have a situation where you have teams looking at their balance sheets, right? So they know that they're going to bring in a certain amount of money in the season, and that's how they balance it at the end of the year. Now, according to, I believe it was Forbes who published numbers of revenues last season, it seems like the Miami Marlins were the only team to really lose money last season. The thing that I want to bring up is, there's a study from 2017 in Forbes that says that the average annual growth rate of a major league team, and this study went from 1991 to 2017, there was a 10.7% average annual growth rate of major league franchise values. So a team that's worth $2 billion is going to be worth $200 million more next year without doing anything. So that needs to be brought into the conversation a little bit too, because if you're the players, you say, okay, well, yeah, maybe you take a $30 million hit this year, but your franchise increased in value. So I don't see why you say you're quote unquote losing money. And certainly a lot of these organizations, they can take out if they budget the numbers right, they can take out a loan, they can pay it back over a few years. When the revenues come up, and going back to that Major League Baseball proposal, the players are saying, okay, we'll expand the playoffs next year too, so you have extra revenue. They had a couple other suggestions for extra revenue as well. So they're kind of recognizing too from the players then that yeah, we can help you create some revenue. Maybe a postseason All-Star Game, postseason home run derby. There will be opportunities to raise revenue, and they just got to figure this out. I think that they're going to. I think the ways we see this going, we can see a somewhat of a middle ground forming where, yeah, it's not going to be 40 to 50, and it's not going to be 114, but maybe it'll be 90 to 100, and there's deferral of money paid out until the teams can have the opportunity to raise the revenue again. There's too much at stake for them to not get this going. And just seeing these different proposals, yes, it's definitely. I studied business in college, right? So I've got an understanding of how the books could work. I think they can work, even if the immediate cash flow is not there. They can make this work.
Since the players' proposal back to the owners was all focused on that March 26th agreement, and we know the owners are against it, do you think that this was essentially just an offer that won't hold much value, sort of like the owners' first proposal?
Well, I don't think this is a proposal. So Jeff Passan said that this is just something that they're tossing around amongst
I
themselves.
meant the players who just mentioned the 114 game season and that proposal back to the owners.
Yeah, so the Baseball Players Association basically just seemed to just start from the beginning, like, yeah, we're earning prorated salaries, period. And then, by the way, here are the other things we need, like the protections for somebody who might be high risk for health-wise to be able to sit out at full pay. Or players to just, frankly, if they want, opt out and not get paid. That was another thing that was on there. So I think they do want to protect some of the most vulnerable players. I mean, let's face it, there have been some players in Major League Baseball who have battled cancer and come back from that. They might say, you know what, I don't want any part of this right now until there's a vaccine. And really, who can blame them? Jake Diekman has had his issues, with his colon that he's done a great job raising a lot of money to bring colitis awareness out there. We're so well about that. He has some concerns, right? So anybody who's compromised, it seems like they worry about the money, but it still sounds like even from the start, the players, their first thing was protecting the health of the players and their families.
Frank, I want to ask you something that hasn't been brought up a whole heck of a lot because people want baseball and people want to see some sports go back. But what about the minor leagues? I mean, they seem to be getting treated awfully. We've seen teams stop paying them. Washington said they were going to pay them. The owner finally said, all right, I'll pay them. I don't know what's happened in Oakland. The last we heard, they weren't going to pay them. But what is the future of minor league baseball, and how does that affect baseball in general?
This is really tough right now with the minor leagues. Now, the Phillies organization has generally been pretty good at promising people that they will get paid. But what's happened to teams like Oakland is in a terrible situation. You know, they're stuck in a stadium lease, which they can't afford to pay right now, by the way. Their revenues are not good for TV. They don't even have a radio contract right now. So the Oakland Athletics, you know, you can only listen to them if you stream it online. You know, sometimes the Oakland Athletics are probably the extreme example in baseball, something that greater MLB has to do something, whether it's move them to another city or find some way to move to San Jose, although the San Francisco Giants would try to block it. But they're in the extreme. But I think it was downright insulting that the Washington Nationals, on the heels of a World Series victory and all kinds of revenue, say that they can't pay their minor league players. And I think they were pretty much shamed for that. I think Sean Doolittle, who was sort of rallying the collection plate for baseball players to help pay those minor league salaries, really stood up and really helped them make sure that the Nationals would walk it back. Now, here's the thing with the minor leagues. We all know that there are prospects in the minor leagues that players want to bring along. But at the same time, there's a lot of players that unfortunately have no chance of advancing to the major leagues. Maybe they just don't have the ability. But at the same time, you need a third baseman if you're playing at AA. And if you don't have one in your organization among your prospects, you probably find somebody to fill the gaps. What the shame of this is, those players that might be the fill the gaps types are just simply being released in some cases, or they're just among the massive amounts of cuts. So I think it's really hard to say that. And one thing too, I just kind of want to throw in here too: teams that are not releasing the players, but also not paying them. I have a hard time with that because those players cannot seek opportunities elsewhere. So there's a whole lot of layers here. I think what's kind of happening right now. The teams that have the financial means are basically being publicly shamed into doing the right thing, like the Nationals just were. And I think based upon what we've seen so far, you're going to see more teams do the right thing if they can find it. I mean, even the Kansas City Royals, they have new ownership. The new ownership hasn't even had the benefit of making a penny yet, and they're making sure they cover all their minor league players. So I think that that's something which is just going to have to happen because people realize it's the right thing. And but the Oakland Athletics, there's got to be some other fund to help teams like that. And meanwhile, it should underscore the need to get that team out of Oakland.
I would, ask the question of what minor league baseball could look. As you mentioned, you need a third baseman to play. He might never make it to the majors, but I mean, so because we had talked about the possibility of, hey, maybe moving forward, you only have one or two minor league teams. I mean, is it really needed to have low A, high A, single A, double A? I mean, there are 5 levels and sometimes more levels of minor leagues really needed. Or do you see a scenario where in the future you might only have, 1 to 2 minor league teams?
Well, they really wanted to cut the proposal that was kind of going out there, and it seems like it's all but going to happen now. 40 teams or so are going to be cut. And a lot of those teams being cut are the short season games, short season teams, like Williamsport, for example. Now, Williamsport is where the Phillies short season affiliate is. And generally the players that would go there are the ones that often just got drafted, or they were international signings who were kind of getting their first regular play. So among things that they talked about doing were pushing back the draft, which would sort of negate the need for it. But so far, I haven't heard anything beyond that. I know that baseball has said that they wanted to make sure that their minor league facilities have the appropriate major league ready resources. They don't want any fields that are not in the best of condition. They don't want any subpar clubhouses. So those were among the issues that they said when they were going to cut back, because in some cases, some cities that hosted a team that whose entire league might be cut, they might actually shift leagues. think it was the Brooklyn Cyclones under that agreement were going to become a Double-A team. If I might be mistaken on the exact way it was going to play out, but I don't think there's anything more beyond that yet, and it will squeeze some players for sure. But I think if you're not going to draft people in June or draft people and immediately send them to Williamsport, you kind of don't need that level. But a lot of towns are going to lose their baseball teams. In fact, I'm really disappointed to see Williamsport go away. Certainly for Williamsport means for the Little League World Series, not having a team play there seems wrong. But I think for the most part that those will be the types of players that won't start that year, and then it'll kind of work itself out down the line.
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com at Frank Klose. The minor league thing is kind of, there's so many kids in this area who have been drafted, and maybe they don't make the majors, but they get to continue to be professional baseball players and live out their dreams and, get a taste of what it's like to play possibly, with some big leaguers if they get that invite to spring training or something like that. And you wonder, what the future holds for Lakewood and Clearwater. You mentioned Williamsport, that kind of stuff. I mean, that is, pretty sobering to hear. I want to ask you about, some of the Major League Baseball claims that they would lose $4 billion if they played an 82-game schedule with no fans in the seats. So I guess the question might be, what incentive do the owners have to try to make a deal to get back out there?
Well, I think it's for what I just kind of mentioned a while ago. Their franchise values are set to increase. I don't think you want to alienate fans by just turning off baseball for the year. Those of us that have been through the strike in 94, 95, I mean, Mike, weren't there people that said, well, I'm done with baseball, and they really stayed away for a long time? I mean, I think a lot of them came back, especially locally when the Phillies got really good in the late 2000s. But yeah, they don't want to risk losing customers. A lot of the data has said that it's been hard to attract younger baseball fans, and I don't think they want to lose the ones that they have. So sometimes in a business, you have to make an investment for the future, and I feel like that's what needs to happen.
Brian, let me jump in and ask you this then real quick. What would no baseball, in your opinion, mean to the sport? If they just said, we can't get a deal, there will be no baseball this year. What would that mean to baseball?
I think they'd be right back where they were in 1995. Just if you think back to that, I mean, it's really that home run chase of Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa to sort of bring baseball back. I mean, they would need to have a similar type of stimulating, I don't know what else to call it, some sort of stimulus that would just all of a sudden wake up, dormant fans again. I mean, I think that's, and really, how do you come up with that? I mean, and obviously we know now steroids led to that, but I'm sure you're not going to purposely do anything like that again just to try to create some excitement. I mean, the fact that you have to try hard, I think, would be devastating. So you're not in a position, in other words, to again alienate anybody who's a young fan or might be just getting into baseball. And you know what? Out of sight, out of mind. If baseball's not in our day-to-day lives, it's very easy to forget it's there, especially right now when our summer is going to be filled with NHL and NBA playoffs and then training camp. I mean, there's plenty of sports to keep people busy. You don't want to let them just sort of take all your fans away.
That's I think the fact that other sports might get out there, and if baseball can't, and the optics look just horrendous if that's the reason why they can't get back out there. But let me ask you this. Do you think there is any more blame to one side or the other at this stage?
I tend to blame the owners more. I mean, like I said, it's not a matter of will they reap the money at some point. To me, I mean, I believe that even a short-term loss will be a long-term gain. But let me tell you this: I heard Steve Phillips, the former GM of the New York Mets, bring up an interesting proposal on MLB Network, and he was saying that you know what, this was probably going to happen anyway. But if you expand baseball to 2 more teams, and that was something that they've been looking at, the Portlands of the world and Vancouvers of the world. If you decide now to add 2 more teams, there's $2 billion of that back that would be recaptured when you sell the franchise rights, or maybe even more. I mean, the way that the fees are going, they could make up that deficit very quickly if they decide to do that. Now, granted, there might be teams that were hoping for that to put that money in their pockets, but that could be a quick solution to all this.
We'll keep our eye on it. It seems to change a lot. They wanted to get something done by the 1st. They wanted to play games. The players did by the 30th. I don't know. The 1st ain't happening. That we know. I don't see the 30th happening. Are you more, less, same optimistic?
Right now, I feel like in 2 weeks from now, when I'm talking to you on Tuesday the 16th or whatever the date is, I think something will be ready to go by then. They're running out of time. They have to do it, preferably within the next week. But if it's not in place by the 16th, I think things look really bad.
All right, Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. He's got more insight on a possible season at our website, 97.3 ESPN.com. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, Frank Klose, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.